I will say, prior to coming to the Morris Center, he could not spell anything. It was not phonetic.
Right.
Now, 90% of the things at school, every kid is doing it on the computer.
Yep.
So he has spell check.
And he's
Um,
close enough with his phonetics.
right.
Okay.
And if you read, yes, if he has to handwrite something,
Mhm.
it's not perfect penmanship. It looks like a boy's handwriting, but you can read it, and it's phonetic.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Dyslexia Success Stories. I'm Dr. Tim Conway. I'm a neuropsychologist who's trained in pediatric neuropsychology, neurorehabilitation for injuries due to brain damage like stroke and how to rebuild skills. Trained also in neuroimaging, fMRI, SPECT imaging, PET imaging, DTI imaging, and I'm published in all those fields as well. And today's podcast, like all of them, just focuses on what happens when families actually find services that are truly evidence-based services. That's a really important terminology because it exists for your pediatricians and all healthcare workers. They live by it, but it really doesn't exist in education. Your pediatrician is required to use proven antibiotics that have been shown to be the most effective for a infection like, say, strep throat. But in our school systems, everyone's making stuff up. We have made up literacy programs, never been tested, never proven to be effective. And so our current statistic today is that 65% of children leave the school system not reading at a proficient level, which basically means they're not at grade level for accuracy or for speed or for reading comprehension. So we're talking to families on this podcast who've either been through nowprograms.com, which is an online, live, interactive, evidence-based delivery service of a highly effective dyslexia program, or the families have been to a transdisciplinary team healthcare clinic that's named after a grandfather. His name was Bernard Morris. And so the clinic is called the Morris Center because he wanted one center where all the healthcare professionals worked together. The pediatrician or the developmental behavioral pediatrician, plus the occupational therapist, plus the speech pathologist, plus the educators, all working together, school psychologists, neuropsychologists, all helping make sure the child or teenager, even young adults, college kids, and even 30 and 40-year-olds, true, are making the best progress possible. So today we have the great pleasure of getting to talk to a family who came to a Morris Center clinic 5 years ago. And the fun part is to see, okay, where are they at today? What did we accomplish 5 years ago? What were the struggles like 5 years ago that brought the family to the Morris Center? And what's happened in the last 5 years when we've done no more intervention from the Morris Center? And most of it's just been working with your regular school system to see how your child can succeed and grow and improve. So it's my pleasure to bring on stage with me Miss Amanda. Amanda, pleasure to have you on board with us today for the Dyslexia Success Stories podcast.
Good to see you, Dr. Conway.
Now, just so the audience knows, let's clarify that you have a medical background as a nurse practitioner who worked in a pediatric primary care practice.
That's right. I have a pediatric nurse practitioner degree, and it had a focus on primary care.
Okay, so that means you got expert training in dyslexia too, right?
Absolutely not. I don't recall one even lecture on dyslexia.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which is just stunning because in pediatric primary care, we know it's going to be anywhere between 1 out of 5 to even 1 out of 3 of the patients in a pediatric primary care center are going to have a genetic likelihood to struggle to learn how to read, struggle to learn how to spell, and have school difficulties. And yet you're not trained, and the pediatrician's typically not trained either to even know what to say to parents about how to be aware of that and what to do about it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, it's mind-blowing, really. The teachers we've met through the years, even some of the best, sweet, great teachers both of my kids have had, they have no training in it and know very little. So it's not getting, taught to them. It's not getting taught to pediatricians or pediatric nurse practitioners, pediatric nurses. So,
And you actually are the
yeah,
opportunity, have the first opportunity to talk to parents because they're coming to you right after the child's born and they're getting well-check visits and they're just getting sick visits.
right.
And if we help the primary care providers know that genetics is a big part of learning
Hmm.
difficulties, genetics is a big part of spelling and reading problems, then
Right.
we can actually be having that conversation with families when the children are 2 or 3 or 4, because we have a longitudinal study that was done by my colleagues at Florida State that actually shows how to predict dyslexia at the age of 4. And we can actually then make sure that we know how to help families check in and know what might be showing up as risk factors to tell you, okay, we're seeing some warning signs, early warning signs. And we've done big longitudinal studies with 5-year-olds to show that we can close the gap for more than 97.6% 5-year-olds. And that's one of our peer review findings,
Right.
are randomized controlled trials. But it's not getting to primary care practitioners, which means it's not getting to families. And so you guys didn't even know about it yourselves when your son
Right.
struggled. What was your first sign that something was happening and he was struggling?
Yeah, I think thinking back, I think I can't explain it unless I go all the way back to the
Sure.
beginning, which was when Asher was born.
Okay.
Um, he was almost inconsolable
Mm,
in the hospital, as a newborn.
yeah.
Um, just really, really fussy. We always, I guess we joke about it. Then it was not funny, but
Oh,
we
that's
said
stressful. Very
yes,
stressful. Yeah.
yes, he did not cry. He screamed.
Oh boy.
Just really hard to console. And my husband and I both have medical backgrounds,
Mhm.
and Asher had severe reflux. So we
Mm,
just always thought it was stomach issues. But as he grew, as he got older, things got easier. But
mhm.
for his first, I would say, 4 years of life, it was really hard. He had
Wow.
a hard time. For one example I can think of is like him learning to walk. He had no issues learning to walk, but
Mhm.
they stumble and trip when they're first learning. And I mean, he would just barely tumble and just was inconsolable.
Wow.
So super fussy.
Mhm.
And that's another thing with my training. I got no training on sensory processing,
Mm,
which is interesting. So looking
yeah.
back, once our path, led us to you and the Morris Center. Prior to that, I just did not realize that was what was going on. But when we came to you, it was like everything made sense.
Gotcha.
So much from his newborn period,
Mhm.
toddler years, um, made a lot of sense.
Well, and what you're describing is the brain's really just an information processing organ. It's
Right.
taking in 8 different inputs. And I'm gonna throw up a slide while we're talking about it.
Okay.
This slide just shows that developmental pyramid. It's by a PhD occupational therapist named Dr. Lucy Jane Miller. And Dr. Miller really tried to help make clear for people to understand there's a developmental hierarchy. There's these 8 sensory inputs at the bottom that build to filtering and modulating skills. They build to, other skills that are central processing skills, and then to higher level skills. And it goes all the way up until you get to language and sensory motor and school skills. And in your training, they might have talked to you about temperament. Oh, this is
Mhm.
a fussy temperament baby,
Correct.
but not about why. Why is the temperament more sensitive for one child than the other? Which means they didn't really talk to you about thresholds of input. Some kids cut their finger, have no idea they cut themselves, and there's blood on the table. And even some adults still have that situation where their threshold of input is really, really high before the brain registers pain. And we'd say, oh, they got a high pain tolerance, high pain threshold.
Mhm.
Other kids get the same cut and they're screaming like they just cut their finger off. And it's just a little paper cut.
Right.
And some adults still are just like that too. So people understand when we're talking about thresholds with pain reception, but they don't always understand those same thresholds exist for visual perception. Is it easy or hard to pick up stuff visually? Acoustic or auditory perception. Is it easy or hard to ignore and filter out outside sounds? Or do you startle tremendously from just the smallest sound?
Mhm.
And all of those sensory processors can affect that temperament, which basically just means, is the child pretty chill and easygoing, or is the child really going to be, easily triggered and startled over and over and over again? And so it's that sensory motor system that begins to build all these brain skills. So, like you said, not knowing that was, part of the system that you're really working with, then that's the piece that makes it hard to understand what's going on. But I speak at OT conferences, and one of the things I tell the OTs is all learning disabilities, from a brain development perspective, all learning disabilities are sensory perception, sensory registration, sensory integration based difficulties. So, how did you understand what was happening as Asher was going along? What started to show up? Was it school skills that showed up first besides the temperament?
Mhm.
Was it any language skills? You said he didn't have any struggles with the motor skills. And here's why that's important for folks who are watching or listening. The language cortex is right here above the left ear. But the piece of the brain right above it, across this big crevice, is the part that controls the mouth. Right above that's the part that controls the fingers. Right above that's the part that controls the trunk and then the arm. And so there's motor skills right next to language skills. So commonly, if a child has struggles with early language skills, they might also have struggles with some sensory motor skills. They're separate, but can be related difficulties.
Right. Yeah. So Asher was always very active, loved being outside. And, like so many people just tell you, he's just a boy. He's just give him time, give him time. And so anytime I would try to get him to sit or even stand at a table to color, draw, he just would refuse, had no interest. At times he would scribble and that was it.
Okay.
But ADHD runs rampant in our family.
Okay.
And Asher's a little boy who loves outside. I was staying at home with him and we played outside constantly.
Mhm.
The only time he would sit still was he would listen to me read.
Okay.
And in school, I had heard, tell all your families, read to their kids, so we would do that and he would sit and listen. But besides that, he just had no interest in like cutting or gluing or
Mhm.
thing. But we honestly thought, we were like, he's just a boy, he's just maturing slow. The
Right.
ADHD crossed my mind, but he was young.
Yeah.
So I was like, we have time.
Mhm.
So we had him in a little Mother's Day Out program. And then I believe, let's see, when he turned 5, just the way his birthday hits, he started K4 at the private school.
Okay.
It was very, very traditional. Here's your assigned seat, and here is your letter A, and color the alligator. And Ash, that was the year that I was like, this cannot be right.
Mhm.
He would cry. He did not want to go to
Mhm.
school. He would. Oh, I remember one time he got in trouble. He told the teacher he was done with his worksheets, and she found them all in the trash can. Like he had, and he had like hated school. And I was like, oh my word, we're 5. This is gonna be a long road.
Yeah.
And so in the meantime, we had discovered Montessori education.
Mhm.
So my thought process with that was, it's hands-on,
Right.
you know, um,
Multisensory.
correct.
Mhm.
And the we found a local Montessori school and the teachers just loved on Asher. And the blessing of the school was he did not realize how far behind he was.
Okay.
So I had him there for kindergarten,
Mhm.
and we still were, even though in the back of my head I was worried, I was like, maybe he just needs another year
Mhm.
somewhere that he can have movement. And he's not so stressed like in a very traditional
Right.
education.
Right. That traditional academic environment has certain structure to it.
Correct.
And let me clarify for anybody who's watching who doesn't know this, Montessori characteristically or historically is
Mhm.
let the child explore their environment,
Right.
have all kinds of great tactile things and visual things and interactive play activities, and let the child just kind of move towards what they really feel drawn to go do, which sounds great
Mhm.
developmentally,
Right.
except for when you have a child who has any learning difficulties and they realize that they're not good with their fingers, they're actually going to avoid all the Montessori equipment that requires fine motor skills.
Mhm.
And the brain only builds stronger skills in one way. Getting older, from going from age 4 to 5 to 6, does not automatically give the brain new skills. It's only when you're getting practice and activities and experiences. And here's the analogy I like to joke about with parents and say, if getting older was the only requirement for new skills to come on board, because sometimes educators with good intentions will tell parents he just hasn't matured yet. He needs another year. Well, if that was how the brain really worked, then we could say that all 50-year-old men are perfectly mature. And you and I know that's not true. There are
That's
some
true.
50-year-olds who still think they're 20 and they still think they're at college or they still think they're in the fraternity. So
Right.
getting older does not guarantee maturity or brain skill development any more from age 5 to 50 than it does from age 5 to 6. It's called experience dependent plasticity. So if
Mhm.
we want fine motor skills to build, there's only one way that's going to happen. You're going to have to engage and do a lot of fine motor activities.
Right.
So in Montessori, when the kids avoid the things they cannot do, the gap gets bigger because they're
Right.
not practicing, they're not working on it, they're not developing the skills. Did you
Correct.
see motor skills that were not developing for Asher that had concerns for you as well?
Yes, I was very concerned about his handwriting.
Okay.
And backtracking a little bit, that K4 program at the very traditional school,
Mhm.
we got referred to occupational therapy
Okay.
for handwriting.
Because they
He
could
did,
see he was struggling with, was it the
yes,
grip or was it the movement or was it all of the above?
all of the above.
Okay.
So they work, they worked on strength. They did that handwriting without tears.
Mhm, mhm.
I do think there were tears
Yeah,
involved. And it basically we did it for 18 months and it was the same. Maybe his strength and his grip was a little bit better, but I mean, you really, you could not tell that we had been going there 2 to 3 times a week, every week.
gotcha. And let
Um,
me give some brain
yeah.
background to that comment too, Amanda, because that's really important for parents to understand. Like, well, but we worked on it. We worked on handwriting. So, Dr. Conway, you just said experience dependent plasticity builds the skills. We gave them the experiences, but the skills didn't build. So, let me give you more clarity on more explicit what the brain needs. It has to be experience dependent activities at the right level. So the brain builds like a house, foundational skills, then first level of the house, then second level of the house, then third level, and then the roof comes later on. But if you're having a child who struggles with handwriting, it's not a handwriting deficit. It's a fine motor control, it's a fine motor
Mhm.
perception, it's a fine motor strength, it's a arm motion control issue. It's sometimes a body core trunk strength issue as well. Because if the child slumps over and they kind of write like this, then they're going to make it even harder to write because they've just changed all of the ergonomics of the body. And so one ways in the Morrison that we actually change handwriting is not by working on handwriting. We work on core trunk strength. We work on arm motor control and strength and perception of position of the arm and movement of the arm. And then later you get to the fine motor skills because that's a more refined motor system. And kids who have difficulty with handwriting, they'll usually grab their pencil like a club and then they'll move their whole arm to do the writing.
Mhm.
And it's become a gross motor activity. It's no longer just the hand moving on the paper like is supposed to happen when writing is a fine motor activity. So that's why when there's learning difficulties or there's information processing inefficiencies in the brain, then a program like Handwriting Without Tears, which has lots of great activities, lots of great design, probably works really well for many, many children who don't have any learning difficulties or any processing difficulties because that's the level of practice they needed. But kids who have any difficulties like Asher need to go to lower level, more explicit practice with highly trained professionals like occupational therapists. So nice that the school actually realized he might need some OT.
Right. So we went through that. Fast forward a little bit. Now we're in kindergarten at the Montessori. There was a sweet teacher there that loved Asher. She would always talk about how smart Asher was, and she was going to teach him to read.
Nice.
So we did some one-on-one tutoring, and then, I want to say after the first or second session, she sent home one of those just really, really early readers.
Okay.
And I remember it was the word cat. And so I sounded it out for Asher. I pointed to each letter. He would tell you the sound that each letter made.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay, so cat, then turn the page. Turn that page, and from the look on his face, the same word was there, and he could not sound it out to save his life. And so I remembered, I said, okay, that's it. We're going to take a break and we're going to go to sleep. And so I tucked him, and I remember telling my husband, I was like, there's no way this is right.
Right.
And my husband reminded me last night, he was like, don't you remember you used to always say you thought it was dyslexia? I don't really remember that, honestly. But I knew something was not right. So
right. Which is really important because this is your first child. You've not
correct.
raised any other kids yet. You've seen other kids. You've been around other kids. But it's not the same when you're the parent raising them. You're like,
absolutely,
am I expecting too much? Am I missing something? And you're
right.
Intelligent parents, medically trained parents. So you're like, what are we doing? What should happen here?
Right.
So I'm sure that puts all those doubts, those questions. And so how do you answer them? How do you figure it out?
Yes. And Asher was always just very, very inquisitive. He could take apart anything and put it back together. He could pop a baby lock like off the door. He could take any baby lock off. And just as he got older, the questions he would ask my husband and I never was concerned about his IQ. I knew he was smart enough.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we did outside testing, just the minimum amount of testing to get the diagnosis. I was given the diagnosis, which actually made me feel better, because now we know what's the issue. Let's figure out how to fix it.
Right.
So now I start researching, calling, going through a list of programs that the testing center had given me, and I am completely overwhelmed.
Yeah.
It's
a terrible spot to be in because you're like,
yes.
as a medically trained professional, how did you go find what to do medically?
Well, I just remember reaching out to as many places as I could, and I just did not have a piece of, anyone I talked to, they would say, oh, your son's just 7 and you already have a diagnosis. This is going to be no issue. You just bring him to my office one afternoon a week and he will be reading in no time. And I just knew, like in my gut, that Asher had a lot more issues, right, and that tutoring once a week was not what we were going to need.
Yeah.
So then the lady who did Asher's testing followed up with me, and I'm sure she could hear it in my voice, but I did not, I was like, I have not found a program. Like, I was so stressed.
Yeah.
And she was like, I used to work at a dyslexia school in another state before we moved here. And I do I believe it's pronounced House, an Orton Gillingham program.
Right.
Orton Gillingham sounded familiar. I knew it was multisensory. How about I come and tutor Asher? And I was like, yes, a godsend. This is a miracle.
Right.
So she came 3 days a week to that Montessori school and would pull Asher out. and worked with him for an entire year.
Wow.
Then, from my point of view, did not see any progress. So after the year,
Right.
she said, "Do you mind if I retest Asher because he is making really, really slow gains?" So of course we said sure.
Right.
She retested him. I think his phonological awareness had improved by maybe 2%.
Mm-hmm.
And so her next sentence is, "I know this sounds crazy, but I just recently met a neuropsychologist named Tim Conway, and I don't know if he could help your son, but do you mind if I share Asher's testing results with him?" And I'm like, "Yes, share them with whoever." And that is how the Lord led us to your program.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because Orton Gillingham is one of the most popular dyslexia programs in the nation. And it's professed to be the answer, it's professed to be the gold standard. But you and I, with medical background, the gold standard means it's been tested, it's scientifically tested, it's proven to be highly effective compared to other programs. And in healthcare, we call that evidence based. Now, in education, that standard doesn't exist. People now use the word evidence based in education, but it doesn't have the same meaning when educators say it versus when healthcare professionals say it. In evidence based in healthcare, it's randomized controlled trials, big studies where it takes program 1 compared to program 2, 3, and 4, and a no treatment group, and you compare them, who gets the best outcomes, because you're trying to figure out what treatment, like what antibiotic or what method, gives the best outcomes for the majority of the people who are struggling with these skills.
Mm-hmm.
And so sadly, Orton Gillingham has no studies like that whatsoever. And so commonly in books about dyslexia, with researchers talking about dyslexia, they say it again and again, there's no evidence that Orton Gillingham is more effective than other programs, other than a bunch of educators believe in it because they saw kids make some progress.
Right.
So it's commonly that parents get led to those programs, but unless they actually ask to see the research, they'll be told things like, one woman told me, "Oh, there's 100 years of research about Orton Gillingham." I'm like, well, I'd like to read those papers because I don't see them anywhere in Medline. When I do a Google Scholar search, nothing comes up about Orton Gillingham
Right.
with 100 years of research. And people just get really sucked in to the belief that it could be working.
Mm-hmm.
But when you really compare it, you find out it's really not working much at all. And
Right.
so your experience, most commonly what parents are told if they've done a year and it hasn't worked yet, like, "Oh, it takes 3 to 7 years, honey. Nobody makes a lot of progress in 1 year. You just hang in there, you just keep struggling, and
Right.
it's going to make some progress later on."
Right.
And then we had the chance to talk after year 1.
Yes. Yes. So,
What's different about that conversation?
well, I think that the tutor shared some info with me, and then got online, tried to do a little research on my own, and what caught my attention was randomized controlled trials.
Right.
So
Which is the true scientific gold standard of
right,
how you find a most effective treatment.
right. So I initially told my husband, what the tutor had told me about you. And my husband is like, "Of course he has research. I'm sure he did it himself." And I was like, "No, it's randomized control studies."
Yeah.
So if it would not have been for that, I don't think my husband would have ever been open to a discussion with you. So we, had a video chat with you and hung up from that. And my husband looked at me and he said, "He is either going to change Asher's life or he's the best salesman I have ever met. So let's see what happens."
Got it. Well, because
So,
it's hard to believe,
yeah.
but I can tell you, myself, my colleagues, folks from the Morris Center, folks from Florida State University,
Mhm.
we didn't do just one randomized controlled trial because that takes 5 years to do. We did 3 randomized controlled trials, one on preventing reading problems with 5-year-olds who are high risk, one with 8 to 10-year-olds who are severely dyslexic. They're reading below the 5th percentile, and they're 8 to 10 years old. They're already diagnosed with dyslexia. They already got a special ed categorization of requirements for an individual education plan or an IEP. They're already specially placed in special ed classrooms with IEP services, and they're supposed to be making good progress. And then the third one was the same study as that, but now we're just focused on, could we not only just change reading accuracy, could we also change reading fluency? And then we did 10 years of post-stroke research with a reading problem that's actually 1,000 times more complicated than dyslexia. It's actually called phonological alexia. We call it alexia because it's an acquired reading problem. You weren't born with it. It's not genetic. It's that you had a brain injury like a stroke, and the stroke caused brain tissue to die in the language part of the brain, and you've lost some speaking skills. You've lost some reading skills. You've lost some spelling skills. And we did more studies on how do we rebuild those skills. We call that neurorehabilitation, because you're just rewiring the brain, rebuilding the skills, and you're either rewiring what's left over as healthy tissue on the left, or if so much of it's gone, you have to actually rewire the right to take on the skills the left used to do. So explaining to parents basically 3 decades of research,
Right.
one can be quite overwhelming, and two is quite perplexing, because if it's so good, if it's so popular, why are we just now hearing about it? And why isn't everybody raving about this More Center Clinic and this nowprograms.com ed tech company?
Right.
And why is it just so harder to find out about it? And let's pause for 1 second and talk about, before we got on this podcast today, you asked your son about some of the struggles he had. And what did he say about those struggles? Did he remember them? He couldn't remember them at all.
He could not remember them at all.
And it's only been 5 years.
Yeah.
So 5 years ago, and let's explain to the audience, one of the struggles he had is he could not catch a ball.
Not
He
to
was about
save his life.
8 years old. The ball's going to hit him in the face before he catches it. Not because he couldn't try, not because his dad didn't try to play ball with him. I remember one comment he said was, "Dad, you got to teach me how to play dodgeball. I'm getting creamed at school in dodgeball." And you're like, "Son, you just dodged the ball. I don't know what to teach you about that."
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, he would always want to practice dodgeball because he hated playing dodgeball because he could not dodge.
Yep,
He
got
could
nailed.
not.
And so that was just telling us that his visual perceptual system and his motor control system was not fully developed. But yet here, just 5 years after getting successful empowerment, he's forgotten that he even struggled like that. He's like, "Mom, are you sure I couldn't catch the ball? What are you talking about?"
Yeah, he's completely forgotten it. Now it's just a normal kid in public school.
Right.
He's got a 504 plan. He can type anything he wants to type. If he needs extra time, he's allowed extra time, but he doesn't need it. So it's a win in our eyes, thinking back to how many struggles he had.
Yeah.
There is no way he would have fluently been reading like he does now. I mean, unless maybe if you called him at 10 p.m. on a day he's exhausted and said read, maybe it wouldn't be 100% smooth, but 99% of the time, if you ask him to read anything out loud, it's just smooth as glass. So I don't, there is no way one of those other programs would have had him reading like he can read now, which is huge.
That's part of the reason why it's so powerful to hear those results. But that's actually one of the reasons why so many people don't hear about us, is because families that we work with don't live in the dyslexia world anymore. They're not seeking more accommodations. They don't need another program. They're not going to go get more IEP help. In fact, most of them are going to leave special ed and not be in special ed anymore.
Exactly.
And life is busy enough as it is for a young family with young kids that dyslexia world just kind of drifts behind, and you just focus on the world of head. And that's one of the things that actually makes us a victim of our own success. Because unless somebody comes to you and says, "I think my kid has dyslexia," then you probably share about it. But most parents in your situation now aren't in parent groups with dyslexic kids.
Right.
They're not in schools full of dyslexic kids. And so they're really not talking about dyslexia much anymore. And no one's going to look at Asher and say, "Was he dyslexic?"
Right.
Because he doesn't struggle to read or spell anymore. Now, spelling might be a little bit harder, because It is a different set of systems,
Hmm.
and it takes a lot of visual memory building. That some people call it orthographic memory. It's
Hmm.
really visual memory for letters and
Hmm.
building those skills and connecting those skills with meaning. It's going to take more and more time to develop, and we don't know everything about how to change all of that system.
Right, right. I will say, prior to coming to the Morris Center, he could not spell anything. It was not phonetic.
Right.
Now, 90% of the things at school, every kid is doing it on the computer.
Yep.
So he has spell check.
And he's
Um,
close enough with his phonetics.
right.
Okay.
And if you read, yes, if he has to handwrite something,
Mhm.
it's not perfect penmanship. It
Mhm.
it looks like a boy's handwriting, but you can read it, and it's phonetic.
Oh, good.
So just thinking back to all those struggles,
Yeah.
I think the OT at the same time he was getting the reading intervention was just a game changer for
Right.
him,
Right,
for
because then you're
sure.
building the sensory motor system. Because what OT is doing in a clinic like the Morris Center is they're changing some fine motor skills, they're changing some core trunk strength, they're changing some oral motor skills too,
Mhm.
which actually relate to your phonological awareness and to your ability to put sounds together, to blend sounds together for that motor action needed for reading, or to hold a word in head and say it back one sound at a time, to split it apart one sound at a time, and then write each letter as you're saying it, which is also part motor skill as well. So OT is working on strengthening those motor, sensory motor, visual skills at the same time that the speech pathology and language or academic intervention team are using that Now Foundations program to build better phonological awareness, better ability to perceive sounds and words, and to judge those 5 changes. Did I add a sound? Did I omit a sound? Did I substitute? Did I shift? Did I repeat a sound? And make sure that his brain can pick up and judge those changes and
Right,
correct them himself.
right, right. Another thing that really improved for him is prior to his time at the Morris Center, if he would get in the car after school, you would ask him how his day was.
Mhm.
He would say, good. Would say, well, what'd you do? Work and played. He could not articulate
Right.
what he had done at school. After the Morris Center, I mean, he can come home now. What did you do? Tell me what you did in each class, and he can tell you.
Nice.
Which is just night and day. The communication skills improved.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what the goal is too, is the Morrison is trying to change language processing, which is spoken
Mhm.
language first, written comes later on. But
Right.
we're doing a program that actually can strengthen both. Because when you do that Now Foundations program, it's strengthening your brain's phonological processor to store words by sound, to retrieve words by sound. It's strengthening your auditory working memory to hold on to a whole string of words, or to organize the words in your head so you can say a much more complex sentence or a much more complex string of words to give
Mhm.
more details in your speech communications. So in our NICHD funded randomized controlled trials, we actually gave the kids measures of spoken language skills. One's called the Clinical Evaluation of Language Fundamentals. It is a speech pathology test. It measures speaking skills and listening skills with language. And when we did that Now Foundations program, we saw kids make large gains, like effect sizes in the range of 3.2 or 4.4, big effect size
Mhm.
changes, which means like going from like the 20th percentile to the 70th percentile on
Right.
some of these expressive language skills and receptive language skills, in addition to changing the reading and spelling skills, because those two systems are connected together. But that's the goal. And then there's another program we would have worked on too, which is that mental imagery.
Yes.
That mental imagery really focuses on now making a movie in your head and
Mhm.
turning the movie into words to say them to somebody else. So whoever you're speaking to, they should get the same movie in their head that you had in your head. And when these two movies are the same, we call that good communication. They know
Right.
exactly what you're talking about. Otherwise, you hear things like good, fine, nothing, or you hear things like, is that stuff by the place next to the thing? You're like,
Yes.
what are we talking about?
That's right. Yes. The mental imagery program is amazing.
And then it's the precursor to his writing skills.
Mm-hmm.
If you can verbalize details and verbalize a whole sentence and verbalize sequences of events, that's the first step before you can actually change your written composition. Written composition requires those spelling skills, those writing skills, those handwriting skills, but it also requires the language skills of deciding what words to put in the first sentence, the second sentence, the third sentence. There's a lot more organization of language. But if you can't do it spoken first, there's no point in working on it with written,
Right.
because you've got to be able to verbally communicate a story and the details before you should really even start doing a lot of work on the written composition.
Mm-hmm.
So how's he doing with composition in school today?
I mean, he does fine. English, I will say English language arts,
Mhm.
that's his least favorite class.
Still more
Um,
effortful.
that's right.
Yeah.
But like for example, last year Asher was all in regular classes. He gave my husband and I a hard time because his math class was called accelerated math. He thought we had put him in an honors class. However, he's just in the regular math. He's not in the class that needs to, go a little bit slower. And for the most part, he makes A's and B's. I think ELA he might have had one C last year, one of the 9 weeks, and math a C. But that is with him doing 100% of his own work, and that is with no tutor, and he's keeping up with his things, and he never would have had the chance to do that had we not come to the Moore Center. So we're very grateful.
And how does he feel about his school skills? Because what most people will tell you is dyslexia is lifelong. They're always going to struggle.
No.
Don't worry about it. They'll find their niche someplace else. They'll find their strength. And we're telling you the opposite. We're telling you it's not lifelong. You should not struggle your whole life. We should be able to take your strong skills and keep building them. We should
Right.
also take your weak skills and make them stronger. Then you have more strengths to be more likely to be more successful.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Now he's just a regular student going to school.
Yes.
So
Excellent.
no more fighting to get him to school.
And what's he want to do? Does he have a career choice? Is he talking about what he's going to do with school or where he's going to go? Or
He does not know, but I have a feeling that he will do something that is physically active, something with his hands.
yes,
Um, but the opportunities that will be available are so many more opportunities available for Asher, um, as opposed to if he would have just struggled through one of those Orton Gillingham. I feel like he honestly would still be doing it. So we will see, but he's got grit, and he's a hard worker. So I think some of those early struggles um, have formed him into the young man he is today. So he's doing great.
nice. And I just couldn't help, and didn't do it in advance, so I'm pulling it up on my phone as we're talking. It's
Okay.
just fun to even talk about numbers. So let's say, for example, when they gave him a list of words to remember, they would just say a bunch of words, like 10, 15 words, say, Asher, say them back to me. He scored at about the 10th percentile.
Mm-hmm.
At the end he was only at the Moore Center for, was it 4 months? 5 months.
5 months.
5 months. He was only at the
Five
Moore Center for
months.
5 months. And then we repeated this test at the end of 5 months. And his ability
Right.
to hold on to a list of words and tell them back to you went from about the 10th percentile to about the 85th percentile.
Wow.
He's like in the top 15 of his age group. So that's just a massive amount of change just in auditory memory, holding stuff on. Now, if you gave him that information as a story, he's about the 55th percentile. He could hold on to stories better. But when he finished, he's now also at the 85th percentile for telling stories back to you. That skill got even stronger as well. Now, the telltale thing was, though, if you waited 20 minutes and he didn't know this was going to happen, he said, hey, Asher, remember that story I read to you 20 minutes ago? Because this is a story where he's just listening. Tell it to me again. His performance dropped from the 55th percentile down to about, look at the right one here, Story recall. Oh, yeah. Okay. It's now down closer to about the 30th percentile.
Mm-hmm.
So he dropped 25 percentile points in his ability to hold on to it long term. But 5 months later, his immediate recall is 85th percentile. His delayed recall, 20 minutes later, is still 85th percentile. So
Right.
now that information's in there, it's sticking, he can retrieve it. It's just massively better overall.
Mm-hmm.
So what that means is his memory testing went from a overall score of about the 40th percentile to an overall score of the 79th percentile.
Yeah.
And listening memory, fine motor skill memory, design drawing memory, all those memory skills got markedly stronger. Now, most of the audience is going to know, but okay, what about his phonological processing? Well, he came in overall scoring at a standard score of 92, which is about 40th percentile.
Mm-hmm.
He left scoring at 129, which is the 97th percentile.
Mm-hmm.
So when you take a language processor system like that phonological system and you really boost it, and let's be clear here, we cannot boost it above the child's IQ level. So that
Right.
means to get scores this high, Asher has to have an IQ that's in that like top 20, 120, 125, 130. It's like the top 10%. Because
Mm-hmm.
now that's where he's scoring on most all these phonological measures. In fact,
Right.
one measure he scored at the 99th percentile
Yeah.
because he got so good at it. And then when we look at his actual other scores, you talked about his verbalization skills. Those were also initially at about the 45th percentile. And those at the end, his scores on the self was 94th, 91st percentile.
Mm-hmm.
Massively higher, not on
Huge
every set,
difference.
but on a lot of them. Yeah, very, very large functional change. And then in his reading skills, he was scoring at about the first percentile.
Mm-hmm.
His reading actually became the 25th percentile, and his reading comprehension is the 37th percentile. It's not fixed, but it's markedly stronger. And our research shows that as he keeps using it, it should just get stronger and stronger. So the
It's
question
true.
most families want to ask is, so how many times did you go back to the Moore Center after those 5 months?
We didn't, So and I think you jogged my memory calling out some of those scores. I remember when we left, I wanted to stay. I would have kept, keep working with him. Y'all are making a huge difference.
It's working.
But it is true, and numbers don't lie, your studies show it. But
Yeah.
when we left, I was still really worried about his reading. Like he could read, but it was still, he still was having to put forth a lot of effort
Right.
to sound those words out.
Yep.
And it was choppy, and in the back, I was nervous, but we get home and we practice. We 20 minutes every day, no matter what.
That's right.
And
Keep
just
using.
read
Keep
and
using.
read and read and read, and
Because now he could.
they improved.
So the practice you're doing now is actually at the right level where it needs to be because he knows how to sound out the words.
Right.
And on our testing, his ability to read fake words, nonsense words, initially was a standard score of 76. It was like about the 5th percentile.
Mm-hmm.
He was about as severely impaired in sounding out words as you could be.
Mm-hmm.
5 months later, he's at 107, which is the 68th percentile.
Right.
So in 5 months, we took him, actually it's above grade level now. At that point, he's above grade level in his accuracy of sending out the words. But you don't change speed at the same time that you change accuracy at his age. If he was 5, our studies show we change both with 5-year-olds. You boost their accuracy and their speed at the same time because their classmates haven't done much more reading than they have. So they're not that further along in the developmental practice of the skill building. But when you're 8 or 9, like he was there, his classmates been reading for 2 or 3 years. And they've been reading accurately, and they're getting faster and faster.
Mm-hmm.
So the gap is bigger for his fluency than it actually is for his accuracy. But he's already closing that accuracy gap. And here's one powerful skill too. We gave him a reading comprehension test.
Mm-hmm.
The book's there. He can look at the book. They ask him the questions. It stays out. He sees the questions written as well. Initially, he scored an 82, which again, let me look that one up quickly because that's not right in my memory. And 82 comes in at about, well, that's going to be like around the 7th percentile, 6th to 7th percentile.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But now, since he's much more accurate with it, and he can do it, and he doesn't have to work so hard to do the reading.
Right.
His reading comprehension is a 132. It's 50 standard score points higher. And what percentile is a 132? It's 98th percentile.
Wow.
So in 5 months, he went from the 6th percentile to the 98th percentile, which means he already had the vocabulary. He already knew what the words meant because you did such a great job reading to him. And a lot of vocabulary first builds from spoken language. But when he couldn't read, he couldn't understand what he's reading because he could not read the words.
Right.
And when we changed that reading, and we also boosted the imagery a little bit as well, he's now comprehending and reading at the 98th percentile. And then again, now we expect it to keep getting stronger and stronger as he gets older and older. And he never came back to the Morris Center again.
Yeah. So pretty remarkable.
That is definitely a true dyslexia success story, Amanda.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
many parents will say, well, I'm glad he got what he needed. I'm like, no, actually, this is what every child needs.
Yes.
We've done randomized controlled trials. We've compared it to other programs. I mean, we compared it to phonics style programs, a little extra one-on-one time just doing random things. And we compared it to no treatments. And they don't get the same results as when you actually use a really developmentally built, scientifically designed, tested, and proven program, which is what Asher got, which is why his trajectory, his outcome is massively better than is typical of kids who are just in a regular school system or even in a dyslexia school, getting programs that are not proven to be highly effective.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. My husband and I, he recalled my memory last night. I had actually reached out before we heard about you to a dyslexia school that I had heard great things about. And, you know, I went, toured the school, talked to them. They talked about a student there that had scored perfect on, I believe it was an SAT test, which I thought that was amazing.
Yeah.
Then the lady followed up by saying, I'm her mother, and she calls me every night, and I orally read to her over the phone, which that's not what I wanted for my child. I wanted Asher to be independent, and you know, nothing against that lady. You know, the love of a parent. Parents are just trying, but it's just so sad that not everyone knows about your program or thinks it sounds too good to be true. Because if Asher chooses to go on to college, you know, he's on his own. He can read what he needs to read. So
doesn't need a tutor, doesn't need to be in special ed, doesn't need student support services. He's got the skills, and he can choose his path from now. That's the real success story of a evidence-based, scientifically proven dyslexia program that we offer online, nowprograms.com. It's anywhere in the world for ages 5 and up. And Amanda, our oldest student online, you should tell Asher this because he considers himself lucky. Our oldest student is 74.
Okay.
And at 74, he still can't spell. And he wants to have better skills because he never got the right instruction early on.
Wow.
Asher doesn't have to worry about that. His spelling skills are just going to keep getting better and better. We will not see him online when he's 74.
Right. Right. Well, our youngest just completed the Now program several months ago. And she's severely ADHD, and I was so worried about doing it online.
Yeah.
But the child did not complain about it.
Wow.
She did it every day after school. She loved her tutor. It kept her, you know, I would give her her afternoon booster dose, and she would come straight in here and do it. And so now she's practicing her skills too.
Excellent. So. Excellent. Then we got another double dyslexia success story for you and your family, which is powerful. Right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us and share Asher's story and share that Sophie did it, and Sophie did it online without having to come to the clinic. That's even lower expense, less disruption to the family. We've made so many avenues possible. And we have a new thing coming out that just came out in December, which is called an app called Lip Letter Land. And Lip Letter Land is for kids ages 3 to 6. And it's an enrichment app to make sure they don't struggle to read and spell. We don't care if you think your kid's going to have dyslexia or not. Every kid benefits from having stronger language and literacy skills. So that's why we built the Lip Letter Land app. It's the whopping $6.99 a month. And you actually can put 4 kids on for that price. So it's actually $1.75 per kid
Oh,
per month
wow, that's great.
to make sure they got early access to begin to do some early strengthening,
Hmm.
early enrichment of that language processor, and pre-reading skills come right out of that app. But it's not one like Angry Birds or Candy Crush. You don't tell the kid go play the app by itself. The parent or the teacher and the child play the app together. And so it's an
Okay.
engaging app. It's a child plus parent app or child plus teacher app to work on these things together, begin to rewire that neurology, the speech
Hmm.
processor we call phoneme awareness and phonological awareness. And our goal is to make sure kids don't come to the clinic. And it's a crazy business model. Few businesses say we're going to try to make sure people don't need our services.
Right. That's right.
But,
That'll be fun to see how it goes
well,
and grows.
I appreciate that's our hope and that's our goal. Well, you tell Asher and Sophie we are very proud of both of them, and we want to see whether they become rocket scientists, or brain scientists, or entrepreneurs, or
That's right.
plumbers, or builders, or whatever they choose to become. Because now they got the
Mhm.
language skills, the literacy skills to choose that own course themselves.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Good to see you.
You too. Take
Bye.
care. Thank you everyone for joining us. We'll be back again in 2 weeks for another dyslexia success story. Believe it or not, we've already recorded about 24 of these of the 1,000 plus that we've done since 1986 at the Morris Center and the Morris Center clinics. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you in 2 weeks.